Hi guys, I'm a Forester here. After I started reviewing coffee on my YouTube channel, I had one recurring comment. People would say, you need to buy a burr grinder if you're serious about coffee. Well, I took their comments to heart and I purchased this Capresso Infinity conical burr grinder through Amazon.com. I'll put a link to it on Amazon in the description box below. Now, I shopped around a lot since I didn't know that much about burr grinders. I've been using this blade grinder for years, and this was a major improvement from using pre-ground coffee. Now, there were several leading brands of burr grinders that I reviewed, and they seem to differ on several things. First of all, of course, price. They range from in the teens to hundreds of dollars. The type of grinder. This one is a burr grinder, and here's a picture right here of the burr. That's versus a flat screen grinder. The burr material, this one's made out of steel versus some are ceramic. How loud they operate and how messy they are. This Capresso was a nice compromise. The better grinders cost around $75 and up. This Capresso was just under $100. It has a conical burr grinder that'll produce a more uniform grind than the flat burr grinders. This burr grinder is made of steel instead of ceramics for a longer life. Let's run some beans through it and you can hear for yourself just how loud it is. This is rated as one of the quietest burr grinders on the market, and I'm going to be running some Pete's French Roast. I've gone ahead and poured out some so it's easier to load the grinder. But let me just point out, one key thing is you have to align this dot with this mark on the grinder. So let's take the lid off, and I'll put 4 scoops to run. That'll give us enough volume to where we can see how uniform the grind is. Okay, there we go. Now I'll put the lid on and I'm going to turn it around until this dot is on the coarsest setting. Then I'll turn the timer for just long enough to run those beans. Alright, we're going to turn this back around and I'll go ahead and empty the grind into a paper filter. And I'll let you see how uniform those grinds are. Try to give you a good view of it. That looks very uniform to me compared to what the blade grinder will do. Okay, let's reload the machine. I'll put 4 tablespoons in again. And this time we'll set it on fine so we can see the difference in the coarse and the fine grinds. Okay. We'll go ahead and turn it till that dot is over here on fine, and this will do everything from very coarse to a Turkish grind. Now this will take just a little bit longer. Okay, it's through. We'll go ahead and let it finish out. Okay, it cuts off by itself. I'll go ahead and turn this back around to the starting point and then empty this out into another paper filter. And then I'll zoom in and let you see the difference in the fine and the coarse grinds. Okay, can you tell which one's the fine, which one's the coarse? I think you can. This is the fine grind on the left and the coarse grind on the right. Now this Capresso has two main pros and one con that I'll go over now. This Capresso produces a much more uniform ground coffee than my old blade grinder, especially when I'm shooting for a coarse grind for French press coffee. The second pro is, to my ears, it's very quiet when operating. You're not going to wake up the whole house when making your morning coffee. But there is one con, and there's really only one that I've noticed. It was something that was mentioned for most of the burr grinders that I reviewed. It tends to be messy, and it can waste coffee. Now, when I read the reviews online, I thought that they meant that it sent coffee dust out onto the counter while it was operating. But from my experience, the problem isn't while it's operating, but it starts right now. It happens when you're cleaning the unit. So let me demonstrate. This little brush right here was included in the packaging, and it's used for cleaning out the grinder of all the grounds that stick to the burr and the plastic parts. So let me go ahead and clean it out now, and I'm going to clean it out into this paper filter right here so you can see the volume of grounds that I'm talking about. This right here is 1/2 of the grinder, and you can see all the coffee that's coated to it. So I'm going to try to do this without making a mess, and I've learned over the past few weeks that I've had this to just be careful and it doesn't make quite so much of a mess. Okay, I'll show you even when it's cleaned up, there's still coffee that's attached to the metal parts and plastic parts in there, but that's about as much as I can get off without just taking an undue amount of time. I'm going to set that aside and then tilt this so you can see how much coffee is remaining in there. Okay, so all that needs to come out, because if you leave it in there, it's going to go stale, and the next time you use this, it won't taste as good, which is the whole point of it. So I'm going to turn it upside down and do my best to try to get that out. This is fairly tedious. There are other brushes that you can get, bigger brushes that maybe make it a little bit easier. Okay, I'm going to tilt it back. I'll show you there's still some in there, but I'm going to tap it, turn it up again. And then the last step is pull this out, and you can tell that there's some coffee that's in there that's fallen down. So let's dump that out. And there's still some stuck in there, but I'm going to let that go. But here's the amount of coffee that we got out just by cleaning it. Oh, that's a pretty significant amount. If that's expensive coffee, that might be a problem. So in summary, grinding my coffee beans with this burr grinder tends to take a little more time, and it's a more deliberate process, especially with the cleaning up. I use it more when I need a coarse grind for French press coffee. When I'm making drip coffee, my blade grinder is quicker and produces a fairly uniform fine grind. The real test is in the taste difference, and I plan to make a couple of blind taste test videos. One will be testing the difference between drip coffee and French press, and the other will be tasting the difference between ground coffee using my blade grinder and this conical burr grinder. I may imagine that there's a noticeable difference in the intensity of flavor in my coffee with this burr grinder and French press coffee versus blade grinder and drip coffee, but I'm going to put it to the test. Y'all stay tuned.